Unsolved true crime. The Setagaya family murder. Imagine it's New Year's Eve. The excitement is in the air as families everywhere are preparing to welcome a fresh start. For the Miyazawa family, that night was meant to be just another peaceful evening in their home, surrounded by love and security. But in a twist of fate, their world turned into a nightmare. What happens when someone brutally murders an entire family, stays in their home as if it's their own, and then vanishes without a trace? That's exactly what happened in the shocking and heartbreaking case of the Setagaya family murder. Despite piles of evidence, this case remains unsolved, leaving behind only sorrow and confusion. Today we will unravel the disturbing details of this mystery, a case that will leave you questioning how such a thing could happen, and how it could still be unsolved after more than 20 years. The Miyazawa family. Let's first take a moment to talk about the Miyazawa family. Mikio Miyazawa was a 44-year-old man who worked at an advertising firm. His wife, Yasuko, 41, was a dedicated teacher, and together they had two beautiful children, Nina, 8, and Rei, 6. This was a tight-knit family, living an ordinary and peaceful life in the quiet Setagaya neighborhood of Tokyo. They had dreams, routines, and plans for the future, just like any other family. But their lives were cut short on that fateful night in 2000. It's hard to comprehend how such a thing could happen to a family so innocent. And even harder to grasp is the fact that whoever did this still walks free. The horrific discovery, New Year's Eve morning, began like any other for Yasuko's mother, who lived next door to the Miyazawas in a semi-detached home. When she couldn't reach her daughter by phone, concern crept in. As she walked over to their house, she had no idea she was about to witness something that would haunt her forever. The scene inside was nothing short of a horror movie. Mikio was found at the bottom of the stairs, brutally stabbed multiple times. Yasuko and their little girl, Nina, were upstairs, victims of the same horrific violence. And Rei, sweet 6-year-old Rei, had been strangled while he slept, never to wake again. The sense of safety that everyone feels in their own home was shattered that day. The thought that someone could invade a home, murder an entire family, and then calmly hang around for hours afterward is almost beyond belief. The killer's bizarre behavior. What's even more unsettling is what the killer did after the murders. He didn't panic and flee. No, he stayed in the house. He ate ice cream from the fridge, used the family's computer, and even took a nap. Imagine that. The killer, in the same house with the bodies of the people he just killed, casually using the internet and eating as if it was his home. The level of disregard for life, the complete absence of remorse. It's chilling. This was someone who felt comfortable enough to linger, to explore the house and use the family's things, all while knowing that 4 lives had been mercilessly taken. DNA, fingerprints, and clues left behind. And here's where things get even more baffling. This killer wasn't careful. He left behind a ton of evidence. His DNA was on the bandages he used to treat his own wounds. Fingerprints were found all over the house, and he left his clothes behind. Yet with all this evidence, the police still haven't been able to identify him. DNA and fingerprint databases in Japan and internationally have come up empty. It's almost as if the killer never existed before or after that night. How is it possible for someone to leave behind so many clues and still remain completely anonymous? The struggles of investigation. The police worked tirelessly on this case. More than 100,000 officers have been involved in the investigation over the years, trying to piece together what happened that night. But the frustrating truth is that despite all the evidence and all the effort, the killer hasn't been found. For the family's relatives and friends, the pain of not knowing who did this must be unbearable. It's not for a lack of trying. Every year, on the anniversary of the murders, the police renew their appeal for information, but nothing concrete has come from it. The house has been preserved exactly as it was, frozen in time, as a reminder of the horrific crime that took place there. Unanswered questions. The unanswered questions surrounding this case only add to the horror. Was the family specifically targeted, or was this a random act of violence? Was the killer someone the family knew? And why did the killer stay in the house for so long afterward? These are questions that may never be answered, but they haunt anyone who knows the details of this case. Some have speculated that the killer may have been mentally unstable. Others believe it could have been a thrill kill, someone who wanted to experience the ultimate high by committing such a violent act. The truth, however, remains hidden, locked away with the mind of the killer. What haunts investigators to this day is that despite the killer's odd behavior, they somehow knew what they were doing when it came to avoiding capture. Even though they left so much evidence behind, they never made a fatal mistake that would directly lead to their identification. It's almost as though the killer had planned their escape well in advance. Were they an opportunist, or was there something deeper, a more insidious reasoning behind it all? Frustration and theories. Many in Japan are frustrated with how this case has been handled. There are those who feel that key pieces of evidence were mishandled in the early days of the investigation. Some think that the focus on the theory that the killer may have been of foreign descent led investigators down the wrong path, causing them to overlook other possibilities. One of the most troubling aspects of this case is that it's still open. There is still hope that one day the killer will be identified. But with each passing year, that hope grows dimmer. Why hasn't this case been solved? You might be asking yourself, how could this case still be unsolved? The DNA evidence alone should be enough to catch the killer. But it's not that simple. If the killer wasn't already in the system, if they've never been arrested, never had their DNA or fingerprints taken, it becomes much harder to track them down. It's also possible that the killer left Japan shortly after the murders and has been living under the radar ever since. The fact that the police have even looked into South Korea for answers suggests that this may be more than just a domestic case. Technology has come a long way since 2000, and there's always a chance that new advancements in forensic science could one day crack the case wide open. But for now, this crime remains one of Japan's greatest unsolved mysteries. The enduring impact. For the people of Japan, and especially for the family and friends of the Miyazawas, the pain of this unsolved crime lingers like a dark cloud. It serves as a grim reminder that even in a peaceful society, darkness can strike without warning, leaving devastation in its wake. The thought that someone capable of such brutality is still out there, living their life, possibly committing more crimes, is terrifying. It's a reality no one wants to face, but it's one that the community must live with every day. The Setagaya family murder has left an indelible scar on those who remember it, a case that defies logic and challenges our understanding of justice. And until that day, when the killer is finally brought to light, we can only wonder, who could commit such an atrocity, and how could they disappear so completely? Murder isn't just a story of loss and violence. It's a story of a family whose lives were stolen and a mystery that refuses to be solved. It's terrifying to think that the person responsible for this is still out there, possibly living a normal life, free from suspicion. For the family's relatives, friends, and the people of Japan, the lack of closure is devastating. The house where the crime took place stands as a silent reminder of the horrific night when a family's future was erased in an instant. It remains a wound that will never fully heal until justice is served.